Sometimes all it takes is one word spoken at the right moment for something invisible to move inside of us, as if the air changed density, as if the heart for a moment stopped defending itself. Have you ever felt this? In a world where everyone talks at the same time, where responses are quick and judgments even more, there is a type of language that does not compete, does not impose, does not hurts. A language that does not come from the hurried mind, but from an older place, quieter, closer, to the earth. Imagine a forest trail at dawn. The dew still rests on the leaves. No step is rushed. No sound is wasted. There, everyone listens before acting. Empathy is born exactly like this, not as a technique, not as a nice speech, but as an inner state of openness. Before understanding others, something in us needs to relax. Before agreeing or disagreeing, something needs to give way, not out of submission, but out of respect for the life that beats on the other side. Many believe that empathy is feeling what someone else feels, but actually it starts when we stop taking up all the space with our own noise, when we put aside the need to win, explain, correct. Nature never imposes itself to be understood. She just introduces herself. And whoever learns to observe also learns to feel. There is an ancient wisdom, as old as the mountains and rivers, that recognizes the power of words not because of what they explain, but because of the space they create. Words that don't close. Words that don't push. Words that invite. Today we are going to walk through this subtle territory, not to memorize concepts, but to remember something your body already knows, something your breath recognizes when it finds safety, something that awakens when we are seen without masks. Along this path you will encounter 3 simple words. They don't scream, they don't impress, but they have the ability to directly touch the most delicate circuit of the human being, that recognizes the other as part of the same flow of life. If you feel like there is something invisible guiding your days, if you realize that your relationships require more gentleness, or if, deep down, you want to feel like a human among humans again, stay here, take a deep breath, and walk with me. There is a communication that happens before words. It manifests itself in the rhythm of breathing, in the inclination of the body, in the time we offer to silence. Even without realizing it, we are crossed by this invisible language all the time. When someone approaches in a hurry, the body feels it. When someone listens without interrupting, the body recognizes it. Empathy is born in this subtle field, where there is no competition for space, just presence. Observe the water of a river. She doesn't ask if she can pass. It also doesn't force the passage. It simply flows, skirting rocks, embracing branches, reflecting the sky without trying to own it. Water does not judge what it finds. She adjusts. This is also true listening. She does not try to correct others nor mold them to her own vision. It just creates space for the other to exist without fear. The problem is that we were educated to respond, not to welcome, to argue, not to feel, to win debates, not to sustain meetings. In modern life, language has become a tool of defense. We speak to protect ourselves. We explain to justify ourselves. We raise our voices so as not to disappear. But the more we talk to assert ourselves, the less we hear what really matters. And the less we hear, the more distant we become from each other, even when we are side by side. Empathy does not arise from the mental effort to understand someone. It arises when we abandon, for a moment, the need to be the center of scene, when we allow the other's world to reveal itself without rushing. In nature, nothing is complete at once. The flower opens little by little. The moon grows night after night. Confidence also follows this rhythm. Therefore, certain words carry a special energy, not because of the sound they produce, but because of the inner posture they demand from those who pronounce them. These are words that ask for humility, that invite a slower pace, that silence the ego before touching the other's heart. When these words are spoken with truth, something changes in the space between two people. The air becomes lighter, the tension decreases, and even without agreement, respect is born. Empathy is not about agreeing with everything. It is recognizing the humanity that inhabits even that which we do not understand. Complete. It's remembering that each person carries invisible battles, untold stories, pains, that they didn't ask for a stage. Along this path, you will realize that the right words do not try to illuminate the another with spotlights. They work like soft flashlights, pointed inward first. And the first of them, it's a simple gesture, almost forgotten, capable of opening paths where previously there was only resistance. There is a simple word that, when spoken with truth, dismantles walls invisible. She doesn't require long explanations. Don't dispute the reason. Does not carry defense. It is a word that bows slightly in front of another, like a branch that bows to the wind. And exactly for that reason it opens the way. That word is sorry, not as an automatic request, learned by social convention, but as an internal gesture of recognition, a silent sign that something within us has realized the impact of its own presence in the world from the other. In nature, when two trees grow very close together, they do not compete until the destruction. They adjust their trunks, redistribute the light, find a way to coexist. A true apology arises from this same movement, the recognition that we occupy space, and that this space touches others. Saying "I'm sorry" is not diminishing yourself. It's abandoning the rigidity of the ego that always needs to be right. It is accepting that, even without intention, we can hurt, weigh down, cross invisible limits. Empathy begins when we recognize what the other person feels before they even understand, and no rational explanation replaces this recognition. Many people resist this word because they believe it represents weakness. But watch the water again. She doesn't ask permission as she goes around the rock. But he also doesn't insist on crossing it by force. She recognizes the obstacle and follows through. When we say sorry, with presence, something immediately relaxes in the other person. The body leaves the defense state. Breathing finds more space. The meeting is possible again. This word activates empathy because it interrupts the cycle of dispute. She signals, "I see you. I recognize what happened between us. I'm not here to win." In modern life, we are trained to justify ourselves before feeling, explaining before listening, but no justification heals a wound that has not been recognized. A true apology is not accompanied by buts. He doesn't try to balance the scales. He simply offers himself, clean, direct, human. And interestingly, when this word is said without strategies, it does not humiliate the speaker. She frees, because the weight of supporting one's own infallibility is enormous, and letting it go is a silent relief. When we pronounce this word, something aligns within us, as if the body remembers that it wasn't born to fight all the time, that relationships are not battlefields, but bridges. This is the first key to empathy, the recognition of impact before intention, the gesture that opens paths where there was tension before, and when that word is greeted by respectful silence, another even more subtle begins to prepare to emerge. There is a word that is almost never said. Still, it is felt immediately when it is present. It does not occupy the air, does not compete for attention, does not try to direct the direction of the conversation. That word is, "I understand." But I don't understand it in a hurry. Used to close a subject. Not the automatic "I understand," which actually means, "I want to talk now." Here we speak of an understanding that arises from silence. Understanding, in this sense, is not agreeing. It's staying. It is supporting the space without the urgency to correct, advise, or explain. In the forest, when the wind passes between the trees, none of them try to stop it. They don't discuss their direction. They just move with it. And that's exactly why they remain standing for so long. When someone shares their pain, their fear, or their confusion, what does that person do most? What you need is not solutions. It's on the floor, from a place where it can rest without being analyzed. Saying, "I understand" with presence is offering this ground. This word deeply activates the empathy circuit because it communicates something essential. You are not alone in what you feel. Your internal world has space here. Many human wounds are not born from the conflict itself, but from the feeling of not being recognized, of speaking and not being heard, of feeling and being rushed. When someone feels truly understood, the body responds, the shoulders relax, the voice slows down, the tension loses strength. But for this word to be true, something needs to happen within us first. We need to give up the spotlight. We need to silence the part that wants to teach, win, or stand out. This is a gesture of deep humility. In modern life, we are trained to react quickly, to fill every pause, to offer instant answers. But empathy does not dwell on speed. She lives in the range. True "I understand" does not come alone. It comes with a careful look of a present body, from listening that doesn't prepare the next speech while the other person is still breathing. And if this idea resonates with you, it is a sign that something inside has already awakened. Maybe a memory, perhaps an old tiredness of having to explain too much, perhaps the simple desire to be welcomed without effort. When we offer understanding to another, something curious happens. We also become more understanding of ourselves, because, by silencing external judgment, we also silence the internal one. This word teaches that, and we don't have to carry everything ourselves, that it is possible to share the weight without transferring it, that listening is as powerful an act as speaking, and when understanding is sustained without haste, a third word, even more delicate, begins to dissolve the boundary between self and other. There is a word that is rarely taught, because it does not strengthen characters, it doesn't build images, does not support masks, yet when spoken with truth, it transforms the entire space around it. That word is we, not as an abstract concept, but as a living experience, an instant in which the rigid boundary between self and other becomes more porous. In nature, nothing exists in isolation. The mountain depends on rain. Rain depends on the sea. The sea depends on the wind. Everything happens in relation. When we say we with presence, something profound happens within the body. The alert system relaxes. The need for defense decreases, because the other is no longer perceived as a threat. Empathy reaches its most subtle form at this point. It is no longer about understanding or recognizing. It's about sharing the same field. To say we is to abandon, even for a moment, the solitary narrative. It is recognizing that what we feel is not just born in us. It is the result of encounters, stories, circumstances, inherited silences. Many conflicts persist because each side insists on protecting its internal territory. Opinions become strengths. Identities become walls. But no bridge is born from a wall. The word we dissolves this rigidity. It does not erase differences. But remember that differences exist within the same flow of life. Observe a river once again. It does not separate the water from the bank. It creates a relationship. The river only exists because there are banks, and the banks are only shaped because there is a river. When someone feels like they are part of a we, loneliness decreases. The pain becomes more bearable, and even disagreement loses its threat. This word activates the deepest empathy circuit because it touches an ancient instinct, that of belonging. Before we were individuals, we were a tribe. Before names, we were shared presence around the fire. The body still remembers this. But to truly say we, something has to fall. The need to be above. The urgency to win. Attachment to one's own version of the story. This is a silent gesture of courage. When the I relaxes, the encounter happens. And in this encounter, there are no winners or losers. There is only joint movement. Empathy is complete here, at the point where the other is no longer observed from a distance, but recognized as part of the same field of existence. And when those three words, recognition, acceptance, and unity, meet, they cease to be words. They become the path. When looked at separately, these three words seem too simple to understand, carry so much weight. But in living experience, they do not act in isolation. They form a route. First, recognition, then the welcome. Finally, unity. Like a river that starts timidly in the mountain, gains strength in the valley, and, in the end, surrenders to the sea. The first word opens the door. It stops the harshness, disarms the defense. It creates the possibility of meeting where there was tension before. The second supports the space. She doesn't cross. Don't invade. It remains. This is the time needed for trust to begin to breathe again. The third dissolves the separation. It doesn't solve everything. It doesn't erase differences. But the field where these differences exist changes. Together, these words do not function as formulas. They function as internal gestures, postures of the body and spirit towards each other. In modern life, we learn to deal with conflicts as problems to be solved. But many conflicts do not require a solution. They ask for presence. Arguments drag on because no one wants to be the first to let their guard down. Relationships deteriorate because everyone wants to be understood, but few they want to understand. And loneliness grows because we forget how to create us. These three words point to another rhythm of existence, a pace closer to walking than running, closer to listening than responding. When practiced, they transform small everyday encounters, a difficult conversation, an awkward silence, an old disagreement. They do not eliminate conflict, but they make it livable. Empathy in this sense is not a lofty ideal. It's a way of being, a way to cross the world without leaving so many traces of wounds along the way. There is something deeply spiritual about this process, not in the sense of something distant or abstract, but in the recognition that life happens between people, between words, between silences. When we speak from these three words, something aligns within us. Breathing slows down, the body relaxes, the mind loses the urgency to prove, and little by little we begin to realize that empathy is not something we offer to others. It's something that crosses us when we branches of resisting. In nature, nothing flourishes in isolation. Even the loneliest tree depends on living soil, on invisible insects, on cycles larger. Human beings are no different. These three words remind us of this. They return us to the condition of part, of a conscious fragment within a moving whole. And when this understanding matures, not as an idea, but as an experience, the path opens to a closure that does not close but invites. Because every true journey doesn't end. It just changes shape. At the end of this path, you may realize that nothing really new was taught. And that's a good sign. Because the deepest truths do not arrive as new information. They arrive as souvenirs, like something the body recognizes even before the mind understands. The three words we are going through here do not belong to a doctrine. They do not require belief. They just point to a gentler way of inhabiting the world, a mode where encounter comes before victory, where listening comes before responding, where we comes before silent isolation. If you look closely, you will see that nature practices empathy all the time. The mountain welcomes the cloud without trying to arrest it. The river receives everything that falls in its course without asking where it came from. The night arrives without expelling the day. It just invites you to retire. Nothing is forced. Nothing is excluded. Everything finds its place in the cycle. Human beings, however, have forgotten this rhythm. We created haste where there was time. We created disputes where there was a relationship. We create noise where there was silence. And, little by little, we moved away from each other and ourselves. Maybe that's why empathy seems so rare. Not because it's difficult, but because it requires something that we have unlearned. The ability to give up interior space. When you say, "I'm sorry," with truth, something is purified. When you say, "I understand," with presence, something calms down. When you say "we" sincerely, something reconnects. These movements don't just change conversations. They change atmospheres. They change homes. They change the way we navigate inevitable conflicts. Empathy does not promise a world without pain, but it offers a world where pain doesn't have to be carried alone. And perhaps this is one of the greatest forms of reverence for the invisible life that we accompanies. Honor the fact that each person who crosses our path is a universe in movement, a sensitive field, as complex as ours. If, starting today, you choose one of these words instead of the automatic impulse, if you choose pause instead of reaction, welcoming instead of correction, something will begin to silently reorganize itself around you. Relationships don't change all at once, but the field where they happen, yes, and this field begins within. If this path touched something in you, if an old memory or a desire to live more gently has been awakened, sign up and continue walking with us through this territory where the visible and the invisible meet. Here, we are not looking for quick answers. We seek listening, presence, and the return to a truer rhythm. Because deep down, empathy is not a social skill. It is a state of harmony. And maybe, just maybe, what we call destiny is not a fixed line in time, but the continuous whisper of the kami, inviting us, from birth, to remember who we are when we stop fighting the flow of life.